Okay, so in lesson 14 we're going to talk about conditionals. Essentially that means that we are going to be able to use the if statement, and we're going to be using inequality operators to design our programs. So we're going to be using booleans and conditionals for that. So let's kind of dive into some of the practice problems. For lesson 14, bubble 9a, we are asked to essentially modify some conditions. So let me sort of zoom into here. So the simplest Boolean expressions are questions that the computer can answer with true or false. Another way to say this is that Boolean expressions evaluate whether something is true or something is false. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify the values of the sprite properties so that each of the Boolean expressions evaluates to true, meaning we're going to make sure that the statements are true. We're going to go ahead and read through the program and see what happens with sprite 1 and sprite 2 and how their properties are compared. For each Boolean expression, we're going to identify the sprite properties being compared, and then we're going to change code in only the first 11 lines so that console log statements print true. So this is what we mean by that. So I'm going to focus on the workspace. If I hit run, we're going to notice down here comparisons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're all false. So we need to make sure that's set, that we change the conditions. I'm going to go back. That we change the properties, or I guess it says just the code, but we're going to change the properties so that the statements are all true. So let's take a look at the first comparison. Okay, so the first comparison is, or let's look at the code first. So the comments are just saying modify the sprite, so all the console commands are print true. We have sprite 1 that's created at 100, 200. It's going to be the apple. It's going to rotate and 30 degrees, and it's going to scale by 1.5 times. We have sprite 2, which is our tiny carrot at 300, 200. It's going to rotate 60 degrees, and the scale is going to be 0 and 5/10. So we're not going to edit this as the comment suggests. We are just going to look at the comparison. So the first console comparison, or the first log, okay, console log comparison 1, which is this one, it's saying, okay, well, is sprite 2 equal to sprite, is the x property of sprite 2 equal to the y property of sprite 2? So if I look at this, sprite 2 is this one. The x and the y are not equal, which is why it's false. So if I change one of the values, let's just change this to 200. I'm going to reset and run it. That makes that first comparison true, because right now sprite 2's x property is equal to sprite 2's y property. Okay, next one, comparison 2. It's currently false. Sprite 2 rotation is less than 40. Sprite 2 rotation is less than 40. So sprite 2 is this one. The rotation is currently 60, so it's currently greater than 40. Let's go ahead and just make it so it's less than 40. So I'm going to change this to 30. I'm going to reset and run, and we notice comparison 2 is true now. For number 3, the sprite 1 scale is equal to sprite 2 scale. Sprite 1 scale is 1.5. Sprite 2 scale is 5/10 or 1/2. So I'm just going to go and change one of them to equal the other. I'm going to change this 1.5. And comparison 3 is true. Comparison 4, the sprite 1's x property is greater than 150. Currently it's at 100. So let's go ahead and just change it to 200. Reset and run. The fourth one is true. And finally, sprite 2's y property is less than 200. Sprite 2's y property is currently 200, so maybe I can change this to 150. Sorry, change it to 150. Reset and run, and now this is true, but I notice that, hey, going back to comparison 1, it's now false. So let's go ahead and modify it again. Sprite 2's x has to equal sprite 2's y. So what I'm going to do is just change this to 150 so that they're both equal. Reset, run. And even though our program kind of looks a little wonky, our comparisons are all true. So I'm going to go ahead and hit finish. For part B, the dropped soup. So the soup should spill out of the bowl when it turns upside down. So if I look at the example, when the bowl is upside down, it turns into an empty bowl because the soup spilled out. So we're going to run the program to see how it works, and I notice that right now the program's already rotating for me. Perfect. I don't have to set that property and use that counter pattern to do so. But I do need to add a conditional that detects when the bowl is upside down. Okay, so conditional, we're going to use the if statement. The next question was, okay, where do I add the if statement? And let me get rid of this console for now. Okay, so basically, I'm going to create the background. The soup is rotating. So I'm going to actually create the if statement after the soup rotates. Okay, and the reason for that is because essentially when this bowl is upside down, I wanted to change the animation. Right, so when the bowl is upside down, set the sprite's animation to be an empty bowl. Okay, well, there's no condition that we have where it says bowl is upside down. So what kind of conditional might we use? Okay, so I'm going to think about this, and excuse my Google Home, it heard me say something. We're going to take a look and we're going to think, okay, well the bowl, oops, let me get rid of this. Well, the bowl starts facing upwards, right, like normal. So how long is it rotating until it's upside down? And if I remember properties of a circle, or the angles of a circle, when something is upside down, that means that they've turned 180 degrees. So this is what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to get my conditional, my if statement. I'm going to add it down here because I want it to rotate. So if, okay, what operator do I want to use? Okay, I'm thinking if I've turned 180 degrees or more, I'm going to change the animation. And I could do either the equal or the greater than. It really doesn't matter in this sense. Let's just use the equals. So if what equals what? Okay, so if the sprite rotation or soup rotation is equal to, let me set this. If the soup rotation is equal to 180 degrees, what do we want to happen? We want to set the sprite's animation to be an empty bowl. So if it rotates 100 degrees, we're going to change the animation to the, I think, bowl. Right, stew was the full one, the bowl is the empty one, so I'm going to change it to bowl. And if I hit run, I'm going to notice that when it's upside down, it becomes the empty bowl. So it looks like we're all set with this. I'm going to go ahead and hit finish and look at 9C, the alien celebration. Here we're going to make the alien dance when the spaceship reaches the top of the screen. So before we look at the code, let's just run and see what happens. Okay, we have the spaceship moving up. Okay, well, how do I make the alien dance when the spaceship reaches the top of the screen? So I'm going to add a conditional that detects when the spaceship is in the sky, and then I'll set the animation to alien dance when that happens. Okay, let's take a look at our code. We have the variable scene, spaceship, and alien. Okay. We have the draw function. And let's take a look at this. Okay, what does this do? Spaceship.y equals spaceship.y minus 3. It looks like it's changing the y property of the spaceship, and it looks like it's going up. So that's why we're subtracting 3 from the y property. And here has the comment for us to insert the code. When the spaceship reaches the top of the screen, set the alien's animation to alien dance. So we're going to use the conditional, the if statement. I'm going to pop it down here under the comment. Okay, so if or when the spaceship reaches the top of the screen. Okay, so I'm going to think, okay, what property are we looking at? Are we talking about the animation property, the X property, the Y property, scale property, or rotation property? And if we're talking about how far up and down the screen it is, we're talking about the Y property. So what I'm going to say, or I'm going to set a conditional if something equals something. Okay, so if what? Again, if the y property of the spaceship reaches the top of the screen. So we might say, let's add the grid so we remember. Let's keep in mind that the top of the screen, the y value is less because the y starts at 0 and 400 is the bottom. So let's say something like if the spaceship.y equals, I don't know, 350, which is towards the top, it would be this line right here. Once it reaches this horizontal line and passes it. So if it equals did I say 350? I meant 50, sorry. If spaceship.y reaches this line, we're going to want the alien to start dancing. Set the alien's animation to alien dance. Okay, so if spaceship.y equals 50, the alien is going to be set to alien dance. Okay, let's go ahead and run our code and see if that works. Okay, as soon as the let's see again, as soon as the spaceship hits 50, you see the alien's animation set to alien dance. Okay, so that's lesson 9, the conditionals. We looked at the if statements and we use conditionals to change our program when something happens.